Hi everyone, I'm Dr.Animaction. I know I said that the next video is going to be a Dr.Animaction and Friends, and it's pretty soon after the last deep dive for another one. Not that I release them on a schedule or anything, so that probably doesn't matter. The thing is that this is a special request that I skipped over last time, and the person that requested it is a friend that could use a fun distraction. Hopefully this will be that distraction, at least for a few minutes. The top 5 Cobra characters are still coming, since this is going to be a relatively short video like Power Masters was, so it won't throw off my, quote, schedule, unquote, very much. Anyway, it's finally time for everyone to saddle up as we ride for the mystic land of Therinia and take an in-depth look at the history, production, and legacy of Wildfire. On the distant world of Darshan sits the small kingdom of Therinia, ruled over by the wise and caring Queen Serana. It was your typical peaceful fantasy kingdom, like one straight out of a Disney movie, until one day the evil Lady Diablin, stepsister of Serana, attacked. Using evil dark magic and treachery, Diablin laid siege to the kingdom, causing the death of Serana in the process. However, one other obstacle stands between Diablin and a rightful claim on the throne, the infant Princess Sarah. Before the witch can get her hands on the baby, though, the mystical horse Wildfire flees the kingdom with Sarah, escaping Darshan through a portal to Earth. Here, on a ranch in Matana, Wildfire entrusted Sarah to a kind rancher named John Kavanaugh. John raised the girl for 12 years, safely keeping her hidden away from the turmoil on her homeworld. At 13, though, Sarah was old enough to take up the fight, and Wildfire summoned her back to Darshan. Once again in Therinia, Sarah joins forces with Wildfire, the sorcerer Alvinar, and a young boy named Doran with his horse Brutus. Together, they take up the battle against Diablin and her monstrous minions for the fate of her rightful place on the throne. From a history perspective, there's not necessarily much to say here. The series came out in 1986 among a wave of new programming from Hanna-Barbera, who was hitting the air with a diverse lineup of shows to reach a broader audience and capitalize on some of the evolving trends of the time. Their full release lineup for the year included The New Adventures of Johnny Quest, Teen Wolf, Pound Puppies, The Flintstone Kids, and Foofer, along with Wildfire. One website I found while researching this video talked about the lineup and compared the series that were released this year to various movie genres, but I'm not sure that's how I see it. Instead, I think this was just the studio casting the widest possible net to try and snag viewership. It's not hard to imagine that the series they went with here were to cover several age groups, boys and girls, and even non-cartoon viewers. This one, though, was their flagship title for a teen and preteen female audience. It also seems like these shows were all conceived and put together in-house by staff committee. I looked through all of them as a basis for comparison and didn't really see many specific created by credits. However, this one seems to have had the most thought put into it, since Wildfire actually had a continuous storyline that persisted throughout the entire 13-episode run, with each episode offering new details about Darshan, Therinia, Sarah, and Wildfire himself, and each continuing to build on the ever-deepening backstory. There's not really much else out there for history, though, so let's see if we can find anything going on in the production that can account for the surprisingly well-thought-out storytelling in this series. Well, there's nothing terribly obvious that jumps out at me in that regard. Wildfire was produced by Hanna-Barbera in 1986, entirely in-house, and premiered as part of their CBS lineup that fall on September 13th, where it ran for 13 episodes. Wikipedia, for what it's worth, credits creation of the series to the duo of Kelly Ward and Jeff Siegel, who are both listed as creative supervisors on IMDb, so it's more likely that this was another production created by committee, one that they just may have ran. The series was written by a revolving door of staff writers, with most only having contributed a single episode. The lone exception to that was John Loy, who was credited with 8. To this point in his career, though, Loy had very few other credits to judge him on. I think that the real quality of the series came from some of the other people behind the scenes, since at this point in time, Hanna-Barbera still had a pretty deep well of industry talent to draw from. Creative design on the series was done by animation luminary Iwo Takamoto, the man responsible for the original designs of Scooby-Doo, Astro, Disney's Peter Pan and Cinderella, and many, many more. Oddly enough, though, credit for the actual character designs in this particular series go to longtime industry presences Tony Segroy and Art Leonardi. Leonardi was primarily an animator whose career started in the mid-50s. Later on, he would contribute some other designs to shows like Pink Panther and Sons, Problem Child, and even Tiny Toons. This was also some early character work from Segroy, as he'd previously worked primarily in layout design for dozens of earlier cartoons throughout a career that started in 1944. But he would also design the characters for this year's Galtar and the Golden Lance, and would eventually go on to design them for a number of other series, most notably Disney's Gargoyles. The series also had music done by legendary Hanna-Barbera composer Hoyt Curtin, giving it a classic and unmistakable HB sound. Finally, and perhaps most importantly in terms of producing consistent quality in this series, all 13 episodes had Ray Patterson as supervising director, who began his career as an animation director in 1954, and whom IMDb shows with 193 animation department credits and 110 director credits over his professional lifetime. Not only did he take on this series as supervising director, but he also took on almost every other show in this year's lineup. The other hallmark of quality for this series came in the form of its voice cast, which actually consisted mostly of names you didn't see in other animation from the era. The series' namesake Wildfire was voiced by prolific actor John Vernon, known for his roles as Animal House's Dean Wormer and Officer Mooney in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The main character of the series, and the only other one to appear in all 13 episodes, Princess Sarah, was voiced by Georgie Irene. Her other notable roles were his daughter Jessie in this same year's New Adventures of Johnny Quest, and various voices through the full run of the Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. She didn't really have many other credits in her career, though she did play the roles of Sunshine and Super Scout in Galactica 1980. Other big names the voice cast included were Susan Blue, known for Transformers Arcee, Visionaries Galadria, and Brave Stars Judge J.B. McBride, as Elvenar's Colt Brutus, Renee Auberjonois, who we know as Odo from Star Trek Deep Space Nine as Elvenar himself, extremely well-known actress and Mallory Archer herself, Jessica Walter, as Lady Diabolin, and Billy Barty, who had previously appeared in hundreds of other roles in live-action and animation as far back as 1927, where he provided voices for original Mickey Mouse shorts as hench creature Dweedle. The cast was rounded out by some other well-known names like Frank Welker and Rob Paulson as other hench creeps and additional voices. There aren't really any other stories or anecdotes about the production of the series, though, so let's take a look at its reach. Well, there's not a lot to say here. The series should have been set up for success right out of the gate, thanks to its quality acting and ongoing story, not to mention that it aired back-to-back with the decade-defining Muppet Babies, but it didn't really find any. This was probably thanks, at least in part, to the fact that even though it was connected to that much more popular series, it actually aired at the same time as some pretty stiff competition. At the same time Wildfire was airing on CBS, ABC was running the Care Bear Family, and NBC showed The Adventures of the Gummy Bears, both of which gained significantly more viewership. Its popularity wasn't helped by the lack of support that it received from HP, as they didn't really support any of the shows they were launching this year. There was no tie-in toy line, no additional merchandise other than a lunchbox and thermos combo, and generally no presence outside of the series itself. Promotion was almost strictly limited to appearing in some print ads running in comic books at the time. The fact that it wasn't very well received by reviewers probably didn't help either, though we have the benefit of seeing that those reviewers really had no idea what they were talking about. In fact, the Los Angeles Times referred to it as having hackneyed writing and poor animation, in the same article where they trashed pretty much every show of the season, calling The Real Ghostbusters an ordinary Saturday morning cartoon adventure, and most other series shameless commercialism. The article goes on to say Care Bears may induce nausea in anyone whose age or IQ is over 9. Cartoons from the 80s just couldn't win with adults at the time, no matter what they did. Unfortunately, this series has pretty much no legacy to speak of. There was a Wildfire live-action series released in 2005, also about a girl and her horse, but it was in no way related to the animated series. This is also one of the few Hanna-Barbera shows that hasn't seen a DVD release, even as part of their burn-on-demand line. Don't you all find it odd that this and Jana of the Jungle are pretty much the only two of their series that haven't? Anyway, at this point there are hardly any options to watch this one beyond a really crap quality rip here on YouTube. It's better than nothing, though. And that's all for this one. Wildfire was an interesting series and one that surprisingly didn't get the attention it probably deserved at the time. If you're a fan of 80s animation, it's definitely worth a watch, and at 13 episodes it won't take you very long at all. Does it hold up with the best of the decade? No, not even really close, but it's still fun enough, and it's a shame it's barely remembered and doesn't get any love today. And now I'm off to edit the top 5 Cobra characters, so look for that one soonish. I appreciate you all watching this episode and letting me slip it into my schedule, again, quote, unquote. We'll do a decent handful of other videos before the next deep dive. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned and stay tuned, as in cartoons. Later.